Yep. Yep.
We're just getting started. We just came to the very bottom of the hill. We started, it's all brush. That's the worst part, is that stupid ass brush. Tracy. How you doing?
So far, so good.
It's on the downhill.
Yeah.
Hello, good sir.
Howdy, how you doing?
Very well.
Caleb?
Oh yeah, it's time.
Great timing. That's progress.
Yes, it is.
I'd rather have that than you.
I agree. They did a chip seal over a neighborhood recently, and it's like,
We have tons of loose gravel everywhere.
it's finally calmed down, but it was like 6 weeks. They didn't go
They
everywhere.
did me last summer.
Did they?
My little area was the only one in my subdivision. I think they had leftover, and they're like, oh, over here. And I still, that was a year.
Try some of that dark. It's supposed to be healthy for you.
I had to blow them off the sidewalk.
In our subdivision.
And you can't sweep. Right? You're trying to sweep the street.
Yeah.
Down in it.
Yes, sir.
Ross down before they put the, I felt like we were in Mayberry RFD. We had that down for like a month. It was dusty. Yeah, they left it after the asphalt or whatever they put down. That was just defensive coordinator.
Very good. Somebody took my gavel.
Behind you.
Okay. Good afternoon. This is Monday, September 10th, a little after 3:30, regular meeting of the Transportation Commission. I will call the roll. Tracy Hopkins.
Present.
Ryan Lancaster.
Present.
Stephen Lewis.
Here.
Ballard is here. Brent Konsalchuk.
Here.
Not for long. We'll get to that. Brian Leslie.
Here.
Ryan Hall.
Here.
David McKinney.
Here.
Mark Wasdahl.
Here.
Luke Kavanagh. John Martin.
John Wasson substituting for.
Thank you, John. Tony Tisdale. Rana Gilbert. And Miranda Carson. Okay. We have a proposed agenda. Item 2. Have you had a minute to look at that? We need to add, detract. Have a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Lewis. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McKinney, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Mr. Konsalchuk, we appreciate you visiting, or not visiting, excuse me, participating. I'll correct it. So participating, you've been with, on the commission, what, 2 years?
Just over 2 years, just under 3, yeah, 2.5
Okay.
about.
And so the email says that you and your wife are going to Phoenix?
Yep, we took an opportunity in Phoenix and we move at the end of this month because our house did not take long to sell in Meridian, so.
Okay. Well, if you want to make any comments or explain what you're doing or not doing, or,
What I'm doing is I don't know yet, so that's, my wife's has the opportunity down there, so I'm gonna follow her. But, no, I just wanted to thank everybody for, letting me serve, and Tracy for, getting me on the committee initially and interviewing me, so I really appreciate that, and I've had fun and able to serve the community of Meridian, and, my wife and I had a tough decision when we were actually making the move, but to leave Meridian, we really do love the city and the people, so that was really difficult, but I'll probably be getting on a committee down in Phoenix somewhere with the city or wherever I end up buying a house, if I can figure that out.
Any other well wishes for Brent, commissioners?
Pack your sunscreen, it's hot.
Yep. It's 111 a couple weeks ago.
Well, Brent, we appreciate your service, and we wish you and your wife and your family well, sir. Stay safe.
Thanks.
Approval of the minutes, item 3. Minutes from the August 6, 2018 minutes, or 2018 meeting, excuse me.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Hood.
I don't know if there's any other changes, but I did just want to note, and this is something I've struggled, might be a little too harsh of a term, but noting attendance when people come in after roll call, I've historically marked them as absent and then in line made the change roughly when they arrived in the minutes.
Sure.
I think going forward, I mean, if you guys want, what I can do is just mark it up above in the roll call section that they arrived late. The problem is the exact time, and if I'm speaking and trying to remember when someone walks in and take minutes that way, but I'll try to maybe note it up here. Up here, you can't see where I'm pointing. In the roll call section,
Right.
Instead, if that's your pleasure, just if you just glance at it, it's tough to tell who actually was at the meeting if you just look at the roll call section. So I don't know. I guess a little feedback, but that's where I'm tempted to move towards that unless there's any objections to that.
I think that would be appropriate, just a little mark to the side, arrived late. Any other comments, commissioners?
So we can skate in at the last second and get credit for the whole meeting.
No,
We just
no.
have to time it right, which is the tricky part. Okay.
Well, you can try that.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
All right. So I think just that notation in the above would be fine, Mr. Hood.
Thank you.
Okay? Any other notes on the minutes from the August 6th meeting? I have a motion to approve the draft then.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Lancaster.
I move to approve the minutes from our last meeting, August 6th meeting.
I have a second.
Second.
We have a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. On to item 4, old business transportation projects. Mr. Hood.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. Just a couple of things to highlight this month. This item begins on page 7. In my packet, actually, page 7 is the only one that doesn't have a page number for some reason. But page 7, Pine Avenue, just a quick update on that. It still says road closed. You can drive it, although you're not supposed to. But they are wrapping it up. Basically, just repairing some fences and patching back some landscaping and putting in some new. But that project is coming to its completion here. So I imagine it'll be fully operational here. I don't want to guess, but in the near future. Then jumping on to page 10, something that didn't make it in your packet, but I wanted to give you a quick update on this one as well. There are some construction going on State Highway 69, and that wasn't under the ITD project, so I just wanted to mention that to you, let you know there is some work going on, particularly near Overland Road, so they're doing some overnight work this week. So just be aware of that if you're out late night. And then there's some lane restrictions on State Highway 69 south of there as well, as they are doing some road work there and putting in some signals as well on State Highway 69. So that's going on, and I forget when it's supposed to be wrapped up. So yeah, that'll be the next couple of months anyways, that work going on. So I apologize that I didn't put more details in your packet, but if you want to go to ITD's website, they do have a project page for this, and you can read more about or sign up for updates if that's in your regular commute route or whatever. You can sign up to get updates, text message or emails about that project. So apologize that I didn't make it into your packet this month. And then on page 11, just a little bit of background information on Harvest Lifestyle Service. That's what a majority of our meeting today is going to be about. So I just thought I'd plug it real quick on the project's update memo. So with that, Mr. Chair, as per usual, I would stand for any questions on items I didn't update. And again, just a couple of things that are in bold there, which is new a month over. So that I would stand for any questions.
Very good. Any questions or comments for Mr. Hood?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes. Mr. Leslie?
Caleb, on page 9, it has the 10-mile project. It says they're putting in a level 3 bike facility there. That's definitely a level 3?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Leslie, that is what the project description was. So as far as that getting scoped, that's how they're designing the project. So that's my understanding. That's right off of ACHD's website.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Leslie, if I may, what does a level 3 bike facility mean?
So that would be separated physical barrier bike lane.
Okay, like a lane on the other side of the curb.
Yeah, you could have the little plastic flags in between the road, the traffic and the bike lane. Could be a curb. Could be like in downtown Boise,
Okay.
the small little concrete berm. Some sort of physical barrier, which is great.
Okay, very good, thank you. Anything else for Mr. Hood? Okay, we'll call for a completed and closed for today's meeting. ACHD Bicycle Advisory Committee update. Mr. Leslie?
I'm gonna go down.
You're setting a bar for Mr. Lancaster, I hope you know.
What's that?
You're setting a bar for Mr. Lancaster.
Well, he got to come down, so I figure, why not? Well, as most of you know, actually, Mr. McKinney may not know, but I also participate in the Bicycle Advisory Committee for ACHD. It's an advisory body just like this for the County Highway District. And we meet once a month at 6 o'clock, first Monday of the month, today, which is why I always have to leave by 5 o'clock every time so I can get there in time. So, Caleb asked that I give, I think this is probably a semi-annual update. I think the last one was early this year or maybe late last year. An update on more of the important things that we've been going over at the Bicycle Advisory Committee, some milestones that we've hit. So I just want to touch on a few of them. So here we go. The big project that we completed in the last year and a half was the Bicycle Master Plan for ACHD. And it hadn't been touched since the inception of it, which was in 2008, 2009. So it was pretty outdated. And so we held, I want to say 4 public outreach work group meetings where the public was invited. And they were, each meeting throughout the year last year was for a different step. We had the outline, goals and objectives, and then we got into the meat of the project later on at the last 2 meetings. And basically what we wanted to do was get the community's feedback across the county on where we can make improvements, where existing facilities are better than maybe ACHD thought they were, where we can go going forward. And so we completed that in this last year. It's available on ACHD's website. If anybody wants the link, I can send the link to Caleb. He can distribute it. But it's really good. It's really, really in-depth. We had a lot of really productive meetings with the community members that came, and we literally just laid out these huge maps of all of Ada County, and people just marked them up and shared their thoughts, their opinions, their postulations, if you were. So you're welcome to look at that. Also on those maps, they have some new preferred bike routes that are not necessarily designated yet, but they will be hopefully in the future. So we have the Shamrock Bikeway that's in Meridian. That's one that's currently designated and mapped out and everything on the road, but we designated a few more throughout this process. So it's pretty good information if you want to take a look. There's also a new ACHD reporting app out there where you can take a picture of something, an issue, a pothole, a sign that's in the road, and attach the picture in the link and upload it right away, and they get a picture of the issue that you can submit. Anybody can submit it on their cell phone, which is pretty cool. There's also a new master bike map using the GIS system the ACHD has, and the overlay on top of the GIS system is really, really cool. It shows the different levels of facilities, level 1, 2, 3, official bike routes, planned bike routes, high traffic routes, low traffic routes, and that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of extra tools for people that want to get around by bicycle have if they need to navigate and they're not real familiar with the area. ACHD just gave us some updates throughout the year on their chip seal projects, which is one of our favorite things as bicyclists, and kind of how they're working their way through the whole county on their chip seal plans. A couple traffic calming projects were really kind of popular with the community. One would be Kootenai Street traffic calming, and the other was 13th Street traffic calming. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with either of those streets, but in particular 13th Street that goes right by Camel's Back Park. It's a real narrow roadway. There's a lot of foot traffic, a lot of bicycle traffic because you got Camel's Back Park right there. And so ACHD did some public outreaches to the people who lived in that area. And it's still not finalized, but there's some plans for some bulb outs basically to be put every other block all the way up to the end where 13th curves towards Hill Road. Some folks on, what is the main street? Harrison. We're not real happy about traffic calming on 13th because they felt everybody would then go through Harrison. But it seems to be right now the City Council and ACHD, or City Council with Boise and ACHD are really leaning towards the bulb outs as planned. But if you want to get more info on it, you're welcome to. Cloverdale, so the Cloverdale, the fire that happened on the highway, or the interstate, I should say, necessitated ACHD to speed up the Cloverdale bridge replacement. So with that project, they've decided to do a level 3 bikeway as well for about 1.5 miles, I want to say. And it's going to be I know from our last meeting last month was it's going to be a grade-separated bikeway, which is like a raised bikeway with a little 6-inch berm. And it'll be the first of its kind in the county, so it's kind of a test pilot to see how it goes. So that's kind of interesting. And a couple of neighborhood bike and pedestrian plans have been done this year. Star had one, and Southwest Boise has one, and that's where they go into the community. ACHD goes into the community, and they bring maps, and they just interact directly, face-to-face with the people who live there and say, how can we make your bike and pedestrian facilities better? What can we do differently? What do you want to see in the future? You know, maybe connectivity gaps with sidewalks, bike lanes, whatnot. And so that pretty much encompasses, that would complete all of Boise City. CUNA was done last year, so they've saved the best for last, Meridian. So I'm still trying to get them to figure out how they want to do Meridian because it's big. You can't really do it all in one. So Meridian hopefully will be coming in the near future. So those are the big ticket items I had. Anybody have any questions?
Questions for Mr. Leslie?
I have one question.
Mr. McKinney?
Earlier, you were asked what's a level 3 bike facility. What distinguishes the level 1 and level 2 facilities?
So level 1 is sort of your neighborhood streets, low volume, low speed. You don't need signage. You don't need bike lanes, separations, low volume, low speed. And it's all, it's dictated by, there's specific federal guidelines on how they do it. It's speed and volume and whatnot. And then level 2 would be like your arterials, bike lanes, painted bike lanes, that kind of thing. but no
Okay.
physical separation.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Anything else for Mr. Leslie? Very good, Mr. Leslie. I appreciate the update.
Thank you.
That brings us to 4C, Mr. Lancaster.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
Commissioners,
Lancaster.
Commissioner Leslie, thank you for the chance to come stand down here. So I am here to update the commission, as promised, on the school zone subcommittee that we've formed in the past couple months. So the school zone commission subcommittee met last week on Thursday afternoon. All of the people present at that meeting are here in this room except for Ross Oyen from ACHD. So the others in attendance were Vice Chairman Lewis and Miranda from the school district and Sergeant Arnold from the police department, Caleb, myself, and again Ross Oyen. So I'm excited about the group that's been assembled. As I told the group, I think we really got an A team. You know, ACHD is sending one of their upper traffic people, as we have on the commission typically with Sean Martin. And so I'm really excited about the group that's been put together. We met again last week. This was the first time we'd met. We talked about some of the objectives that we want to accomplish as a group as far as communication between agencies or groups. You know, it seems that in the past we've had communication between some of the parties, but not all. And so, you know, we're trying to get the whole group together, if you will, have some transparency that way. We talked about some things going forward as far as you know, some of the things that I would like to see, such as what does a typical school zone look like in Meridian city limits, right? That's the sphere of influence we have, and you know, perhaps some differentiation between high schools, middle schools, elementary schools. We had a fair amount of discussion. Miranda brought to the discussion or to the meeting some concerns about Hillsdale. Did I get it right this time? Okay, Hillsdale Elementary, the new elementary school near Eagle and Amity. We had some discussion about that, and we've since had some communication back from ACHD, so I think that's been helpful. But, you know, again, an objective is to get all these different agencies and groups talking, and I think we still have some work to do there, but I think this is the right way to do it. So our subcommittee, you know, we talked previously about it meeting, you know, not too frequently and sort of irregularly, but because it was a brand new idea here this past month, we have decided to meet again before our October commission meeting, so in late September. We're going to try to get together again to, you know, to go forward, and we'll take it as it comes from there. But that's my report to the commission. I'm open to any questions if the commission has any, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Lancaster. Questions for Mr. Lancaster?
What was the concerns, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
What was the concerns on Hillsdale Elementary?
So Mr. Chairman, Mr. Commissioner, I'll introduce it. Miranda, if you want to jump in, but it was about school crossing across South Eagle Road, just south of Amity, and the high speeds associated with Eagle Road.
There is a pedestrian beacon crossing at Eagle and Taconic. It's the only student crossing in the West Ada School District that's a 50-mile-per-hour road. So it is Ross Oyen did confirm that it's got school zone flashers out there to slow down to 20. From the information we got back from crossing guards at the end of last year, it doesn't sound like either that wasn't in place or that just wasn't happening. People weren't slowing to 20. So right now, there's some construction in the neighborhood that feeds that crossing, so students aren't crossing right now. But they will be crossing again about November 1st. So that's one reason we're meeting again next month, so we can kind of come to a resolution before the kids start crossing again.
That beacon wasn't operational last year.
Yes, it was.
It was?
Came on May 9th last year. It came on right at the end of the school year.
Yeah, okay.
So the students were still being bused. They were still considered safety busing students. But we did have some that went ahead and started crossing, and we went ahead and put a crossing guard out there. And that beacon is operational right now. I don't know if the school zone beacons were operational at the end of last year, though. But I do know that Ross Oyen said they're operational now, so hopefully when November 1st comes, that traffic will slow.
Yeah, I know it got really late last year. School was almost out before they got the beacons up, and then they just set the lights up here not too long ago. Thank you.
So, Mr. Chairman, I guess one more thought to share with you is, you know, I would, if it's the pleasure of the commission, I'd like to provide an update, maybe not always down here, but sometimes from up here. Whenever our subcommittee meets, because, you know, again, the subcommittee isn't its own group, it's a subcommittee of this commission, and so to me, it seems appropriate to come back and report back every time, you know, if that's the pleasure of the chairman and the commission.
Oh, and I think that that's appropriate, Mr. Lancaster, and it's a good means of the communication and bringing issues before us, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Mr. Hood.
before we move on, I just wanted to also refresh your memory that even though the person has not yet been identified, the youth commissioner was also identified as a potential
Yes.
member on this subcommittee. I did hear from the mayor's office last week, they're interviewing students today. And I imagine they may even select somebody. They do need to be affirmed by the council. So here before the next meeting, we should have a backfilled youth commissioner on this body, and then we'll let them know that they're also part of the school zone.
So they'd be wearing two hats.
Yes, the same
As a
two.
commissioner and then as a subcommittee member. Okay, all right. Very good. Item 4C is completed for this session. That brings us to 5A, Meridian Police Department Status Report, Sergeant Arnold.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, Sergeant.
So I don't come with a lot today. I was gone last month. I was on vacation at the time, but Corporal Wilson was in, and he's since been out on vacation. We haven't really had a lot of time to check or to talk, but I wanted to see if he brought up the no right turn light at Eagle and U-Stick.
Yes.
And made those concerns of ours. Okay.
Had a robust conversation about that. It was
it's,
good.
They're frustrating. I was sitting there today, 3 cars back, and watched 2 cars make the turn, and there I sit. Like, I can't get around them. There's nowhere for people to move over to get out of the way, and it's really hard for us to enforce. There's nowhere to sit and watch it outside of just circling around and going through the turn lane. And when we go through the turn lane, look at the light and see if it's working, and then see if somebody turns in front of us. But they never turn in front of us, as luck would have it. I don't know if we just need to park a black and white car there to get them to not do that. But yeah, it's frustrating. And then the other thing I was hoping to talk about today, but I didn't get the data back that I was hoping, is the blinky yellow arrow crashes at Linder and Chinden. I know that we've had about 3 of them since March. All 3 of them have been injury crashes. All 3 of them have been because of people turning on that yellow arrow and taking one to the side of the car. One of the things we've been very fortunate in so far is that there's been no passengers when they're making that eastbound turn to go northbound Linder, because that's where the cars are impacting, is in the passenger side of the car. And luckily, so far, there's been no passengers, so we haven't had to deal with the fallout from that in a crash. But there's definitely some high speeds, there's definitely a lot of lanes that they have to cover and depth perception and things like that to take into account too. So hopefully by next month I'll have that information back and we can kind of talk about some ideas and maybe some solutions to the problem.
Comments for Sergeant Arnold? Questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Lester.
So Sergeant Arnold, there's got to be other intersections where it's same speed limit, blinky yellow? Do we have problems with other intersections?
So not the same type of designed intersections. This one has, I think there's 2 lanes westbound, and then a turn lane also to go northbound for westbound traffic, so a right turn lane. And then the speed's at 55 miles an hour. Most of them are 35 to 40 miles an hour is where we see them.
That's right.
I know this year, just the reports that I've approved 29 crashes in Meridian because of blinking yellow arrow failures. Drivers misinterpreting what they mean or going when they thought they had the right of way. So there's definitely some crashes because of that, but because of the lower, the 35 or 40 mile an hour speeds, we don't see the injuries like we do at Linder and Chinden, or the extreme property damage that we see over there. The other problem with it is it really, you get a wreck there at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it really has an effect on westbound traffic and how long it's going to take traffic to get moving again through that area. We try and keep it moving as best we can, but sometimes there's just nothing we can do but either route them down Linder or try and make one lane a through lane and get them through one at a time.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess that's the only, I forgot there was 2 lanes that go through there.
Yeah, I think there's 2 westbound lanes and then there's the right turn lane also. We haven't seen any crashes involving the cars that are turning right and the cars that are turning left. It's always been the one car turning left to go northbound onto Linder and the other car coming up and T-boning them.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Sergeant, that blinking yellow always makes me pause. I'm an old dog. When you hit an arrow, that meant you hit a protected lane. And I even see the green arrows, and people pause for a minute going, what do I do with the green arrow now?
Yeah, people are easily distracted. I think that's a lot of what we see in our crashes. We had a big one today on Cherry Lane, John was just asking me about. 4 cars, 1 person transported to the hospital over spilled chicken. He had stopped and got chicken for lunch and set it on the seat, and it had fallen forward, and he was picking it up off the floor and drove 40 miles an hour into a minivan with a pregnant lady and her husband, and then that pushed it into another car and pushed it into another car. So, it's not just phones, it's everything. I mean, it's like people driving is second nature anymore. It's just, we just get in and go and hope for the best. And if the phone rings, we pick it up. If there's something on the side of the road, we look at it. If the chicken falls over, we pick it up. It's already on the floor. It's not going to get any dirtier.
I know this is not the time, but I've seen something in the last month that passed on the right bicycle lane. Guy passed me, used the bicycle lane on the right to pass me one night. Last night, used the turn lane to pass me on the left. Now.
You're driving so slow.
I had my triangle out there. Come on, guys. But some of the driving behavior is astounding.
Yeah. So personal experience, I always try and draw out of my personal experiences. Sunday, I take it back. Sunday, I was driving out to a friend's house that lives off of Blessinger and Highway 44.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And I slowed down to make the right turn from 44 on the Blessinger, and there's a left turn lane there. And 55 miles an hour, this car passes me in the left turn lane, goes into oncoming left turn lane, and then cuts back across. And I thought, man, I would venture to say that person had no idea if there was a car coming in that other left turn lane. They probably looked at me and went, I'm going to go around that guy, and I'm going to use the turn lane to do it. But at 55 miles an hour, it's hard to get moved back over. If somebody was in that left turn lane, there would have been a head-on collision.
Yeah. No.
And,
You have your hands full, Sergeant. We appreciate your service.
Well, thanks.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
One more question. So Do our neighboring states or nearby states, do they use blinky yellows?
I'll
Do you know?
leave that to John. Maybe John has the answer to that. I don't know for sure.
The reason I ask is we have a lot of growth. I mean, we're growing like gangbusters, and I'm wondering if people aren't familiar when they get here how to handle those blinky yellows.
Do you know the answer to that, John?
Commissioner, yes, some of them do. It is a FHWA approved device, so Highways has approved it. I can't tell you exactly where it's utilized. I think part of the problem, though, is that Idaho, like many other states, does not require a periodic retesting of drivers and either a skills test or a written rules test. You get it when you're 16 years old and you drive till you're 80, and new devices, new things come out, and you have no idea how to deal with them, and you don't take the time to do the research on it.
Thank you.
Can I, Mr. Chair?
Ms. Carson?
Just because the blinking turn lights are a big discussion point for us at the district, because we did lose a student last year. It was December of last year. It was not in Meridian, it was in Eagle, but at State and Park, where the students turn left all morning, every morning, and there's a blinking yellow light there, and the kids don't know how to use it as well as even experienced drivers don't know how to use it. So just my opinion is, you know, since we're talking about blinking yellow lights, they don't seem like a very safe practice. You either go or you don't go.
Well, in watching the lights, you know, as I drive around and I see the lights, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of cars that get through anyways on the blinking yellow arrow. 3 or 4 usually is about as many as you see before it turns red again. And then the rest of them stop and they wait for the protected green to go, and then they go. And personally, I don't know if the benefit is worth the risk, you know, for what we're seeing. Definitely lots and lots of property damage. Few injuries here and there. The higher the speeds get, you know, like Miranda was saying, the higher the speeds get, the more serious the injuries are going to get. The fatalities in this case. I can see us prying somebody out of a car at Linder and Chinden and taking them to the morgue. If they're on that passenger side and they get hit. I mean, 55 miles an hour, there aren't very many cars that are going to hold up to that. And especially if you put a small car making that left turn and a big car going straight, that little car is going to be in a world of hurt.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. McKinney?
I'll just add my 2 cents on this, because I've thought about this a little bit and noticed, for example, I used to travel, you know, daily on Chinden and turn at Fox Run, and before there was the flashing yellow, I would sit there for what seemed like ages waiting for a left turn signal. And sitting there thinking, you know, I can see for a half a mile down the road. There's only one lane of oncoming traffic, and I have to sit here and wait and wait and wait. And so I was glad when they put it in. But I can see exactly what you're saying at Linder. It's not just the speed of the oncoming traffic, but it's also the number of lanes of traffic that are oncoming, and the visibility. For example, if you have an opposing left turn lane that's backed up, that blocks visibility and so on. So that combines with the speed strikes me as the 2 factors, you know, because, you know, a 50-mile-an-hour speed of oncoming traffic I didn't view as any problem when I had a half mile of visibility and had no trouble seeing if there was a gap large enough. But when you add in those other approaching lanes and a filled up left turn bay, you know, maybe that's a situation where policy ought to be, yeah, we don't have that flashing yellow turn signal. We just have the permitted or the protected left turn, or none at all on a place like that.
I agree. I think at the very minimum, and like I said, I'll wait until I get the information back from our data clerks, but maybe even just reducing the amount of time that you have that blinking yellow arrow during the day. You know, from 7 o'clock in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning until 7 or 8 o'clock at night. It's either a solid green arrow or it's nothing, and you can't make the turn. And then after that, you're on your own, and keep your fingers crossed and floor it. But you know, maybe that's the answer. Just getting rid of it at that intersection, I think that's an option. As the traffic signals go in on Meridian Road, I'm pretty sure those are gonna have also the blinking yellow arrows. And we have kind of the same thing. We have that 2 lanes of traffic that's traveling at 55 miles an hour. If you guys drive Meridian Road, you know the traffic's really not going 55 miles an hour. 60 and 65 is kind of the norm. So again, you have that blinking yellow arrow, and somebody looks down the road and they say, well, I can make it, but I didn't realize that car is going as fast as it was going, and they try and make that turn. And they
Mr. Chairman, so currently, that Amity and Meridian Road is got a blinking yellow.
Yeah.
So does Victory.
Does.
Yeah, I think Victory does.
Victory does too, but so does, I turn it Meridian Road and Amity, and there's a blinking yellow there. And you got the same speeds.
Yeah.
And at Meridian and Amity, the cars are actually coming over I mean, you can't see a half a mile. Probably see maybe right at, maybe a quarter of a mile.
Quarter mile to a third of a mile,
Yeah.
I would say.
So, but it sure keeps, I mean, I love it. It keeps from stacking that turn lane up huge, because it used to. So you couldn't get through it. And now it kind of keeps it.
Keeps it moving.
So that's my 2 cents.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Lancaster.
can I ask one question on a different topic of Sergeant Arnold?
Yes, you may.
Okay, thank you. So I guess along the school zone topics that we've been talking about, so school has started since our last meeting, and how, from an enforcement standpoint, how has back to school been? Do you have extra enforcement during back to school, or just how does that work?
We ran a 2-week grant period through ITD for school zone enforcement for the first 2 weeks of school. I worked 2 of those shifts, and plenty of tickets, plenty of citations. Wednesday, we're going out with 2 motors and an unmarked car to go follow school buses and watch for stop arm violations. We'll see how motors are doing with that. I get reportable stop arm violations reports and non-reportable reports also from Brown Bus Company. They send those over, and if we get one that's reportable, we'll assign it to an officer and go follow up on it. If we get ones that are non-reportable and we start seeing a pattern, certain areas that are worse than others, we'll send officers out. And in this case, a bus that comes from Brown Bus Company that goes up Eagle Road and then turns and goes up Locust Grove and then around U-Stick and places like that seems to have violations on just about every stop. So we're going to take a look at that and see what's going on. But that's our Wednesday project for school, all-encompassing school enforcement. We get a lot of complaints about kids driving through neighborhoods, things like that, cutting through parking lots, and we work those as best we can from the traffic end of it. Unfortunately, our patrol guys are generally too busy to help us with that, but the traffic team works that as best we can.
Very good. Good question, Mr. Lancaster. Anything else for Sergeant Arnold?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
quick question. What is a reportable and an unreportable?
So a reportable school bus violation is one where the driver can identify, or the school bus driver can identify the driver that went through and get a license plate number or at least a good description of the car. We have to really have that license plate number, though, to track the car down, but they have to be able to identify the driver. A non-reportable is one where they just, it's dark out or whatever the case may be. They can't see the license plate, they can't see the driver, but they see a set of headlights go through, or they see the car go through, or something like that.
Okay, thank you.
Sergeant Arnold, what school is that brown bus running for?
I don't have the answer to that, I don't know.
Anything else for Sergeant Arnold? Very good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Hood, Staff Communications.
Yes, Mr. Chair, just real quick, page 13, staff communications, there's 4 pages there. There is a question in the first communication there from Lisa Econin with Compass. I know we invited her back at the end of her presentation a couple of months ago. I left that invite open, but it does say if you'd like to have Compass staff present the highlights of the draft Communities in Motion 2040 2.0 plan before the public comment period, which opens September 21st to October 21st. Just let her know. So that would be your October meeting if you're so inclined to have her come back and do that. So I'll let you kind of stew on that for a second. The other ones, I guess I'll let you read it at your leisure. I will just note, and Mr. Wasson gave an update on future meeting topic 6A last month, and we got another correspondence on future meeting topic 6F this last month too. So both of those future meeting topics are essentially waiting for champions to come and address you, but you've got some background information there for when they do, someone does make the time to come and really explain their issue and their request to you in the future. So with that, that is the update on communications I've received. I will just also note real quick, unless there's any questions, Joanne Richter is waiting for us over at Harvest, so they get done at 4, so told her about 4:15, so we're there, so I don't want to keep her waiting too long. Anyways, just thought she sent me a message saying, where are you guys? So, anyways.
Does anyone have any comments for Mr. Hood on the communications? As far as for Compass and that invite, I think that would be appropriate, Mr. Hood, to have her come back. Okay, are we adjourning or postponing the adjournment till the end of our tour, or how do you want to?
Correct, Mr. Chair. So I will need, it'll be kind of informal the next 20 minutes or half hour, however long this takes us, but then I will need a motion in a second. When we're getting ready to adjourn, we won't discuss any real business. We'll just do the tour, but we will need to adjourn.
Or would you like that, or would you like that in advance?
I don't know, Mr. Baird, what's your thoughts on that? I don't know, it's too critical, so.
Mr. Chair and members of the commission, these are pretty informal. The way it was noticed is adjourning after, but you could entertain a motion to amend the agenda to adjourn and note that your next activity would be a voluntary tour where no business will be discussed.
Well, I guess to the extent that we're still an agency of the city or part of the city, an open meeting law and yada, 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 why don't we go and do the tour and do what Mr. Hood suggested and adjourn formally at that time?
That's acceptable as well.
Okay, and we'll just keep any objections from being heard. All right.
So, Mr. Chair, if we can, we're going to meet them at their offices over here on Idaho Avenue, so 18 East Idaho. If we get separated by chance, it's going to be quicker to probably cut through the bank and Old City Hall, but it's basically exactly.
For us to follow.
Just outside.
She likes it, but she kind of reminds her of Meridian a lot. But it's hot.
Well, I'm taking a chocolate.
It's hotter.
Gilbert's all.
It's 80.
My wife and I get somebody from the neighborhood.
That's a nice town. It reminds her of Meridian. It's not the same size.
Well, I went to school in Tucson. I lived in Phoenix for 4 years.
Oh, so you know what you're doing.
I know what I'm doing. My wife.
She was my friend. Thank you. I might have missed it. That's always a good time.
Well, he tells me that at Maple Grove and Chinden, the permissive left.
Today's your last day, isn't it? You get to take that, man.
Is that I didn't want to
I don't play with signals, but we have the capability of blacking it out.
look back at fond memory. It's either on or off there for that, so. And I know that we had some crashes at State Highway 44 in Edgewood.
Yeah.
That got removed as a permissive.
That's true.
So, yeah, there's different ways to.
See you, gentlemen.
Take care.
Get rid of it or put it on a timer at certain point times where you get too much oncoming traffic. It's just.
Yeah, Chief Callie's not ready to pull the plug on all of them, but he was ready to pull the plug on 44.
Oh, yeah. Those left turn blinking yellows are the best things since sliced bread.
Well, it's just like anything else.
You go to states that don't use them, you really get them.
Hi.
Are you guys done in here?
No, not quite.
Oh, okay, because we got Mayak that comes in right after.
They should be back in 5 minutes, maybe 10 at the most. And then I would anticipate they'll adjourn within 5 minutes after that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, where did they go?
They went on a harvest tour.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. All
What
right.
group do you have?
This is Mayak that's coming in, and they have the room at 5 o'clock. Caleb usually is out by 5. So, apparently they went on a little tour, harvest tour. And they'll be back in about 5 minutes, and maybe 5 more minutes to adjourn. So, no. All right.
Adjourned from over there.
Did you? Good.
You missed out.
Stacy's held me up for a couple of minutes. By the time I got over there, everybody was gone.
Well, thanks for being here today. Sorry it wasn't very exciting, but yeah, next month, you can pencil it in anyways. I don't know if you and Sean can work that out, I guess, but I would envision that we'll get some Paramount folks here next month, so.
Good. The gal sent me another email today. They want that pathway closed. And I said, I have no authority to do that.
They did a public records request here, and we gave them the information on the plat, and I haven't heard yet if they want to come back to council and petition them to close that. I haven't talked to Miranda or anybody else about it. I think it's a bad idea, even if it's egress. It's not the intent, I mean, having to evacuate in case of an emergency, that's one thing. But we're talking about just access between the neighborhood and the school. We want to send everybody out on
Linda Road.
you know, I mean, sorry, it's an inconvenience and even a nuisance at this point, but I mean, we've got schools where there's, on 3 sides, there's these micropath connections.
I'm sorry, the path was in before your house was built.
Yeah.
The fact that you didn't pay